Welcome to our little family association of those with Sigerfoos ancestry. Though it is a name found in America in the early 1700s, it still is not as common as you might think it would be after more than 240 years. One reason is probably there are a multitude of spellings today for that original name, such as Sigerfoos, 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 and Sigerfoos. Right now, what can safely be assumed is that they all come from two early immigrant families. The family of Hans Jacob Sigerfoos was the first of two known Sigerfoos families to come over from Europe. The ship Thistle arrived at Philadelphia, Pennsylvania by October 28, 1738, and this family of 9 began a new chapter of their lives in that area of Pennsylvania, particularly north of Philadelphia. A fine account of this family has been found and is written below. From the Sigerfoos Family's Newsletter Number 1, Mark Amann, July 1981. Wesley Sigerfoos, born in 1860 on a farm near South Whitney, Indiana, helped with the construction of many buildings in one phase or another, hauling logs, planing lumber, or doing the actual carpentry work. He recalls, as a child, that wild turkeys were abundant in that part of the state, and he and his brothers kept the larder filled with ease. In 1903, Wesley Sigerfoos had his picture taken in the doorway of his establishment with his son Boyd, then about 6. The Birch Lake Quakers were the spiritual descendants of 17th century members of the Religious Society of Friends who had been attracted to the New World by a promise of religious freedom and economic opportunity. This is the 1870 home of James Bonine. He married Sarah Osborne in 1848. This was also called the Elk Park and was known as part of the Underground Railroad. Ella Sigerfoos was born in this house in 1874. This is the house today, where a recent resident says a secret tunnel extending underneath the house was used to hide runaway slaves in the mid-1800s. In addition, a light in the bell tower allegedly was used as a signal of safety for the runaways.
3 times 3, hurrah, hurrah, the laurel wreath is ready now to place upon his loyal brow. We'll all feel gay when Johnny comes marching home. In 1861, hurrah, hurrah, that was when the war began. Hurrah, hurrah, in 1862, both sides were a-falling to, and we drank stone wine when Johnny come marching home.
Jesse East, husband of Anna Osborne.
1863, hurrah, hurrah, Abe Lincoln set the poor...
Anna Osborne, sister of Cynthia Osborne, that married Abraham Sigerfoos. This is Gideon Osborne. He was the third child of Charles Osborne and Hannah Swain. Gideon with his brother Leander were proprietors of a flour mill. He also sold groceries, provisions, salt. He had a wife, Nancy, and a son, William, and a daughter, Frances. Mary Eleanor Sigerfoos, born in 1841. She is sister to Albertos, Cordelia, and Creighton Sigerfoos. Will Bogue. Mary married Will in 1863. He was born 1841 and died in 1916. He is brother to Rachel, Elvira, Susanna, and Stephen Bogue. Mary Bogue. William Bogue. William and Mary had 3 children, Merle, Carlton, and Ralph. The Bogue children: Merle, born in 1864, followed by Carlton in 1869, and Ralph in 1874. Charles Bogue. Susanna Bogue, daughter of Hannah East and Stephen Bogue, born 1838. Son Stephen Bogue was a leading horticulturalist and stock raiser in Cass County, Michigan. Located near Cassopolis, Michigan, the home of Stephen Bogue was once used as a station on the Underground Railroad. From 1840 to 1850, Stephen aided runaway slaves on the way to freedom. Civil War veterans of Cassopolis, Michigan, held annual reunions decades before November 11th was officially designated Veterans Day in 1954. Hannah Brakeman Crandall, born in 1818, married Richard Lake in 1839. Richmond Lake was the first child of 11 children of Joseph and Sally Norton Lake. Hannah and Richmond would be great-great-grandparents of Effie Blyly. James Madison Lake, second son of Richmond and Hannah, was born in 1842 in Chicago. He died in Cass County, Michigan in 1908 by lightning. He and his wife and teenage daughter are buried in Birch Lake Cemetery. For many years, Effie Whitmyer collected family history. In the late 70s, she teamed up with her nephew, Mark Ammons, who was also an avid family history buff. In one of many letters they exchanged over the years, Mark writes, "Dear Aunt Effie, what I wanted to tell you, other than a friendly greeting, was that I had contacted a descendant of Tanner Crandall last month. Tanner Crandall, as you recall, was your grandmother's grandfather." Mark Ammon, December 9, 1980. Dear Aunt Effie, I've got to tell you of a little of what I've been doing recently. I do hope that your health has improved since those winter months. Here are a couple of obituaries I found in the booklets you sent me. Mark Ammons, June 5, 1981. This is the school in Penn Township where Creighton Sigerfoos taught. Woven reed baby buggies, strollers, and children's tricycles were once manufactured in Elkhart at the old Sideway Toplift Company. Adolf Kubernick, who worked at the Toplift Company, gave Effie Whitmyer one of her favorite dolls. Donald Maxwell was born in 1900 to Harry and Edith Sigerfoos Maxwell. This is the wedding picture of Donald and Beulah in the 1920s. Mr. and Mrs. Donald Maxwell on their 50th wedding anniversary. Clarence Everett and Millie Maxwell. He was born in 1903 and lived in Hartford, Michigan. Milton John Porball and wife Joyce. John Porball on the right, being honored by the Red Cross. Mr. and Mrs. John Porball celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. Many members of the Blyly family pictured here, with Alan Porball near the top left, Effie Blyly near the front middle, and Ruth Blyly near the front right. Effie Whitmyer. A tribute to Effie by her daughter Dorothy for all the history that Effie saved and moved many times. Dorothy has enjoyed the many hours spent on research started by her mother. Mary Cook Sigerfoos. She lived near Hagerstown, Maryland when she left the area with her children about 1828 to Phillipsburg, Ohio. She came with her children full grown, with each one seeking their own trade. They came to Elkhart County, Indiana in 1835. This is Abraham Sigerfoos, born in 1811. About 1835, they came to Elkhart County, Indiana. Subsequently, the mother and two sons, George and Abraham, moved to Vidalia, Cass County, Michigan, which was just being laid out by Stephen Bogue. Abraham Sigerfoos in a Civil War jacket. Mary Eleanor Sigerfoos, born 1841. Mary Eleanor Bogue married William Bogue in 1863. Cordelia Annette Sigerfoos, born 1846, married James Henry Wilson in 1865. Jacob and Mary Sigerfoos. Jacob was born in 1803. He married Mary in 1830. They had 10 children. Andrew and Ephraim Sigerfoos were the third and fifth sons of Jacob and Mary Sigerfoos. Both boys were in the Civil War. Andrew enlisted in May of 1861. He fought 10 hard battles and received a wounded leg. He was 22 years old when he enlisted. Ephraim was 20 when he went into the Civil War. This is George Sigerfoos, followed by Nancy Sigerfoos, his wife. He was a son of Margaret Sigerfoos. Margaret was the firstborn of Abraham and Mary Sigerfoos. He married Nancy in 1850. His early life was spent in Elkhart, and being an unusually bright boy, it was easy for him to lead in all of his studies, and being reared in time of adversity, he soon developed the qualities that count so much for success. He had the ability to acquire many lasting friends. He was quite successful in his business matters. Edward Sigerfoos, son of George and Nancy. Creighton's half-sister by Abraham and Miss Waterman. A typical shanty of rough logs covered with bark sheltered pioneer family in southern Michigan about 1836. Built in 1836, this is the oldest house in Niles, Michigan. This is Leander Osborne. He was a physician and surgeon of Azalea, Michigan. He had a wife, 2 sons, and a daughter. He also ran a store with his uncle Gideon Osborne. His aunt Cynthia Osborne married Abraham Sigerfoos. The Branadar is part of an original hotel built in the early 1890s at Diamond Lake, Cassopolis, Michigan. At around 1905, it is believed to have been divided into 2 or 3 parts, and this portion served as a private residence for Mary Nora Sigerfoos and William Bogue. Richard Lake. The Lakes are from England. This is the barn that Richard Lake had built on their property. This is the front of the restored house of Richmond and Hannah Lake in Cassopolis, Michigan. Prior to this, life had started for Richmond and Hannah in a log cabin in Penn Township. Tombstone of Tanner Crandall and his wife. In the same cemetery is this tombstone of Richmond and Hannah Lake. Sarah Jane Lake married Creighton Hale Sigerfoos in December of 1871. They had 6 children. The first, Charles Osborne, born in 1873, followed by Ella May in 1874. Hi, Aunt Effie. I just wanted to confirm that I received your package. I never realized that Grandma's and Grandpa Sigerfoos had made such a detailed record. Within the first hour of looking it over, I figured it added an extra generation to what I knew before about the Sigerfoos and Lake families, and I never knew about the Crandalls at all. Mark Ammons, January 10th. This is the Birch Lake Quaker Church, pictured here in 1960 across from the Birch Lake Cemetery. This is the Birch Lake Quaker Church in more recent years. The Birch Lake Cemetery across the road is where the Sigerfooses are buried. Gravesite of Abraham Sigerfoos. He plotted out Vidalia, Michigan, and was one of the first blacksmiths. Cynthia Osborne Sigerfoos is also buried in this cemetery. Gravesite of John George Sigerfoos, brother of Abraham Sigerfoos. Barn at the home of Creighton and Sarah Jane. This is the same barn in 1987. This is the house where Sarah Jane and Creighton Sigerfoos lived. Creighton built the house in 1883. They first farmed in Cassopolis, Michigan, and he had a fine arrowhead collection. Sarah Jane and Creighton Sigerfoos near Palm Beach, Florida, 1925. Creighton and Sarah Jane Sigerfoos with their daughter Edith and Harry Maxwell, Pleasant Lake, Michigan. A different home of Creighton and Sarah Jane Sigerfoos, located on Vine in West Lexington. Taken in approximately 1900, this picture shows many of the family. The young girl on the right is Effie Blyly. Sarah Jane is holding baby Ruth Blyly on her lap. This is the same house, since remodeled, in this picture taken in 1987. Ella Mae Sigerfoos, born in 1874. She married William Blyly, who had been a neighbor of them to the north in Elkhart. They married in 1893 and had 7 children. She died in 1950. Mary Edith Sigerfoos, born in 1876. Mary Edith married Harry Maxwell. Harry and Edith with child Clarence. They lived in the Sigerfoos house where Harry raised ducks. He also had a creamery station and a grocery store. First house where Harry and Edith Maxwell lived in Edwardsburg. Harry Maxwell. Don Maxwell and Harry. Jim Maxwell, taken in Sicily during World War II. Frank and Carolyn Maxwell on their wedding day in 1949, children of Edith and Harry. First Christian Church in Elkhart, where the Sigerfoos family and grandchildren attended. The congregation of the First Christian Church in 1926. The little box marks Effie Blyly. Gravesite of Creighton and Sarah Jane Lake Sigerfoos and young son Charles Osborne, who died at 5 months. Cynthia Sigerfoos. Merle Kaiser. Will Sigerfoos with sister Cynthia behind the farm on the St. Joe River. Merle Kaiser. Grace in the back left, Effie second from the right in the rear. Bob B., Dorothy, and Ralph appear in this picture. Cynthia Sigerfoos, here and followed by 2 other photos. Ralph and his mother on the Sigerfoos front porch. This is Ralph. Ralph Kaiser appears here as the smallest boy in the front. Mrs. Cynthia Kaiser, age 89, a longtime Elkhart resident, died Monday in Racine, Wisconsin. She had lived in Racine with her only son, Ralph Kaiser, for several months. 1967. Sadie and Cynthia. Cynthia, William, and Sadie Sigerfoos. Sadie Eleanor Sigerfoos, born in 1880. Sadie married Al Poorbaugh. They had 3 children. Maurice Howard and Milton Poorbaugh. William Sigerfoos, about 1900. Grace Pearl, she married William Sigerfoos in 1904. This house is just west of the Sigerfoos house on West Lexington. This is Grace with her mother Charlotte on the porch. This is William Sigerfoos with his family. From the left, Charles, Grace, Elizabeth, then William and Dorothy. From the left, Elizabeth, Dorothy, and Charles Sigerfoos, about 1920. Dorothy Sigerfoos, 1912. Grace holding Elizabeth, 1920. Charles Sigerfoos. Esther Holben Sigerfoos. William Sigerfoos in Japan in 1960. Elizabeth Sigerfoos Carlson, Dorothy Sigerfoos Bradley, Charles and Esther Sigerfoos. Seated, Grace Pearl Sigerfoos, widow of William Sigerfoos. The child on the left may be Creighton Sigerfoos, with Ralph Kaiser on the right. September 1928. Creighton Sigerfoos. Grace Sigerfoos and Dorothy and Charles. This picture was taken about 1913. Creighton Sigerfoos with Sarah Jane and the children and grandchildren in this picture taken about 1900. Effie Blyly is in the middle over the X. Creighton Hale Sigerfoos and Sarah Jane Lake Sigerfoos with their grown children. In the front row from the left is William, Sarah Jane, and Creighton. Back row from the left, Sadie, Ella, Cynthia, and Edith. Creighton Sigerfoos feeding his chickens on the farm on the West Indiana Avenue house in Elkhart. The great-grandchildren of Creighton Hale and Sarah Jane Lake Sigerfoos on their farm in the summer of 1931. In the front row is Dottie and Aletha Joy Whitmyer. Middle row, Beatrice Atkins, Berthella Whitmyer holding Carolyn Atkins, Alice Jane Eckert, and Betty Eckert. The back row is Billy Eckert. Creighton Sigerfoos and his sister Cordelia Annette. Creighton and Sarah Sigerfoos with their family and descendants. Taken in 1921. This picture was taken 10 years later in 1931. This house was built on the Creighton Sigerfoos farm about 1904. William Sigerfoos lived here part of his life. This was an old tavern near the Sigerfoos farm. Customers were from the river traffic and the stagecoach. These are the children of Dorothy Sigerfoos Berwin Bradley. Left to right, Lynn, Tom, Connie, and Jacqueline. Charles Sigerfoos, son of Grace and William, and Esther Sigerfoos, taken in 1982. Elizabeth Sigerfoos, youngest daughter of Grace and William.